is a PEOF session that is recorded, where we will be jumping into a few different things with you today. As every PEOF session, our goal here is to start a conversation. So please feel free to jump in. The session is recorded. We want to make it a workshop and we want to make it interesting together. That being said, we would ask that you try to centralize your questions, comments, feedback, etc. in the chat so that we can route those back to our speakers in the panel today. So what do we have going on today? It is a brief session where we will be learning about a recent patient engagement in digital health publication, discussing some of the insights that came from that with the authors and seeing how we can leverage them for our work. So it's all about patient partnership with people and patients in digital health. We're also going to be doing a co-creation workshop to determine the next steps for one of the paper's assets. And that's going to look like a panel with our authors, the co-creation lab, and then a quick wrap up. I know that we've blocked everybody's calendar today for a full 90 minutes, but chances are that we're going to wrap up a little bit early since we know that your time is valuable and we want to make sure that the discussion today flows, is on track, and it stays interesting and relevant for you all. So getting into the topic of today's discussion, what we are bringing forward to you is a publication on patient engagement in digital health. And now we're all here today because despite its proven value in clinical research and healthcare delivery, we understand that meaningful and early involvement of patients and people remains insufficiently embedded in digital health design and implementation. So what we've done is this session is actually brought to you by a project at Patient Focused Medicines Development, PFMD, on patient engagement and digital health. It's been an ongoing discussion for the last few years, really based off of a study we did after our first publication to understand different perspectives on digital health. What are the barriers to meaningful partnership with patients and people, and the fragmented nature of data governance and technology adoption as a result of that. So in coordination with the study and a lot of insights gathered over the years at PEOF sessions, both virtual and in person, we have our publication that you would have received as a pre-read for this session, as well as we've also been working on a roadmap in digital health on how to engage with patients. It's the why, how, when to engage with patients when developing a digital health solution. So a lot of this is culminating into what we are going to talk about today. We're going to help to take the insights forward to continue our mission of empowering the patient community and enabling meaningful involvement of people and patients in digital health. So moving forward, we have our trusty panel today, and I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves from the authors from this publication. So starting with you, Leanne.
Yep, I'm Leanne West, and I am president of the International Children's Advisory Network, and I'm also a technology developer as well as a rare disease patient myself.
Thanks, Leanne. Derek.
Great. Hi, everybody. Derek Mitchell from a wet and rainy Dublin, but probably more relevant to today. I'm the executive director of PFMD, very much involved in the patient advocacy and involvement scene for many years, and looking forward to today's webinar.
Thanks, Derek. Birgit?
Hello, everyone. I'm Birgit. I'm from Germany. Here we have fog and gray clouds up in the air, so no sunshine here today. I'm the project coordinator and founder of Data Saves Lives Germany and the European Digital Health Academy. I'm also a digital health data and also patient communication expert and living with MS myself.
Thanks, Brigitte. And unfortunately, Stuart Faulkner was not able to join us at the last minute, but an author, a valuable author of this publication. And of course, my name is Elizabeth Priest. I am a program director with PFMD and the Synergist. And I am also an author of the publication, but I'm really going to be putting my moderator hat on today and supporting you all. And you'll have to bear with me. I'm a little nervous today. It's my first webinar in a while as I recently became a mother. So I'm just coming back into things, and we're starting strong with a PEOF session here. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting while we were writing this paper, and Leanne, you mentioned that in the preparation for this webinar, we were talking about, it was a huge learning for us in writing the paper, even within our small author group, to determine what we mean by digital health. So what do we mean when we talk about digital health, and what was kind of your experience when we started writing the paper?
So there is definitely a broad definition for digital health, and I don't know that everybody means the same thing when we talk about it. So we really tried to help define what that was for the reader, and we kind of lump them into three categories of types of digital health. So there's those things that help educate you, whether it's like a wellness app or tracking of things that you're doing every day to help get you, more healthy, to keep you on track. There's care delivery, so maybe there's some remote monitoring tools like wearables. Maybe there's medical devices, maybe there's, portals and things, the support to help you manage. I mean, again, you can kind of think anything and everything that's electronic, that has data, that is, there to help you with healthcare in some capacity. That's kind of what we mean. So I know it's super broad, and that in itself can kind of create problems with when you're talking about things for people to understand exactly what you're talking about. And so I think that's important to define as we move forward. But yeah, and then you can see at the bottom, though, the foundation. We obviously want people to be involved at every step of the process when these digital tools are being created, and for everybody to really understand what the technologies are, how they work for you, and those types of things.
Thanks, Leanne. So as Leanne mentioned, this is a digital health classification from the patient perspective. This is in the publication. Of course, it doesn't look as colorful as it does, right now. We're going to be taking a deeper dive into this classification as the session progresses. But the reason that we wanted to start with it is because whether we're talking about challenges, opinions, opportunities for digital health, each area has its own challenge, each area has its own opportunities. And so, when we're talking about challenges, if we say one thing, but just digital health has this challenge, sometimes it can be a little challenging to make sure that we are on the same page. So this is really a tool to support the dialogues that we're having, and we're going to go a little bit more into this. And I will ask my authors also to keep this in mind as we go through the questions moving forward. So today, we're going to be talking about key challenges, main takeaways from this publication, and calls to action to the community. So within the publication itself, we outlined quite a few challenges to engagement or partnership. We're going to start here with Birgit. Birgit, what is one of the key barriers identified that stuck out to you?
I think it's most the education and the knowledge about AI, how to use it, what can we do with AI, and maybe how should we use AI. So don't stop thinking keep thinking and also make sure that you understand how to use the tool, because this is one of the key points I see at the moment also in the use where we are with EDA and also with Data Saves Lives Germany working on it. It's not just giving a question, receiving maybe an answer, and then copy pasting into social media or to other patients, and then you don't know, is it right, is it wrong? So what I would say is really know the basics and know how to use it, and also start to think strategic and also be a little bit critical to the AI, because not everything is okay or right or correct. And this is something what people have to learn again. So this would be my personal challenge and what I also see in my daily work.
Does anyone want to respond to that? I mean, AI is a super hot topic all the time now.
Yeah, it is. And on the other hand, so if you use it as a real tool, it's great. You can do a lot, but you have to learn how to work with it. So this is the point on that thing, because when you don't know how to use it, then you will fail, or the answers will be not really good, or it will go a little bit into the GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, and this is not what we want. And this is not what we need. We need correct information. We need good text and also good output. But this is what we have to learn now, and this is a really big gap what I see in my daily work, and I see it on Instagram, I see it on the social media channels. People do copy and paste and don't ask. And sorry, I disagree with that.
And I will answer. Yeah, I will address that too. So as a technology developer, lots of things can be done with AI beyond what you see in ChatGPT or trying to figure out your symptoms or giving people advice on what to do. Lots of data can be taken to create algorithms to predict what's going to happen in your healthcare journey. These are done by professionals who know exactly what they're doing with AI and data analytics and mathematics and statistics and those types of things. And those things can be trusted. But there definitely are pieces. If you're just using ChatGPT, it's going to make stuff up. We all know that. But sometimes when you're using AI, it's to analyze data. And that is not the same at all. And I think that's something really critical for people to understand, is that there are different ways to use AI, and some of them have issues and some of them really don't.
I'm getting some comments coming in, and Brigitte, I'd be interested to see how you would respond to those, that it feels like AI can be a black box of just, algorithms, not sure what's happening, and it's becoming really difficult. So Amy Mahir said it's really difficult to determine what is real and legit. Well, how would you respond to that? I mean, from anyone in the panel.
I can respond. I think so. As a research scientist for a living, I definitely don't trust everything that I see, and to try to figure out what's real and legit. Sometimes AI will give you references, and you can go look for those and see what they are and see what they say and see if it agrees with what it wrote, because a lot of times it'll either make up a reference so you know it's not legit, or it will misquote a reference, right? So it doesn't infer the right things from the reference. And I think that, just being diligent in what you're reading and question what you're reading and trying to do that homework behind what it's presenting, I think is really important. And I think the other thing is if you're not a trained scientist, like most people are not, you might be referred to an article and you could read it and you're like, I don't even understand this, right? And so I think sometimes too, then it's important to ask more questions to try to figure out what is right. If you don't understand it, see if you can find it in a simpler form. See if you can ask somebody who may actually understand the technical publication.
Thanks, Leanna. Derek, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I can't help but you asked the question earlier, what was it like when we started writing this article? That when I see that literally the conversation has just been completely overtaken by artificial intelligence when we talk about digital health, I kind of have to go back to kind of first principles on this, and that good use of artificial health. The principles are exactly the same for digital health, for artificial intelligence in health. And that's what happened when we started writing the article, where we wanted to know what the different stakeholder expectations were for digital health. And we got those, and we recognized that they were, on the vast majority, very similar in principles to previous expectation matrices we'd done in medicines development and other areas of health innovation. But the single biggest issue was trust. And this was specific to digital health and is only magnified by artificial intelligence in terms of what it's bringing up for people, whether it's the bias behind the data sets that are the algorithm is being trained on, or the lack of transparency on where it is being used and applied. So, and I think right now in early 2026, the world is starting to put in place the kind of guardrails and safeguards, at least from the national governments and regulators, from the point of view of maybe high risk uses of AI in health, and putting in the necessary transparency legislation that will require that when AI is being deployed, that you are at least informed about it. The question then becomes, well, how much do you trust it? And the key aspect, certainly when we look at artificial intelligence, is around the human in the loop. That particularly when you get to those maybe higher risk applications, or the applications that inform clinical decision making, those are the ones that I think that we need more patient in the loop channels, because certainly if I'm going back to the application of the principles of good, meaningful and sustainable patient engagement, the creation of opportunities for patients to become more involved in the processes around technology development, they're yet to be developed in the AI field. But certainly I would love for things to be exploring how patients could be that human in the loop, whereby, as Birgit has said, you have a certain degree of knowledge that you're able to tell the difference between an algorithm that has been trained appropriately on appropriate data with good representation, but then is actually aiding and assisting in clinical decision making, without the human, the healthcare professional, or indeed the patient becoming hugely reliant on the AI. So I think that's in early 2026 where we're at, and is probably the makings of a follow-on publication, if I'm being honest, because patient in the loop is something that you don't hear too much about right now. You hear a good bit about human in the loop, and the regulatory guidances that are coming down from countries do emphasize this. But the next level is how the human can be more patient-centered.
Thanks, Derek. I'm just going to maybe say two things and then see if Birgit wants to respond, or we can move forward. But what you said about this potential has the potential for another publication. So one of the things that I would love to see in the chat is also, if this conversation is taking a certain direction, if you would like to see more of something, the insights that we've gathered from previous PEOF sessions have directly fed into this type of publication. So if you'd like to see, if you've read the publication, if you've seen this, if you'd like to see a further evolution, we're always super open to hear what else you feel like it would be interesting to move forward. So that kind of, what's next in this degree. So just wanted to put it out there that if people feel like they would like to see something else that hasn't been or isn't covered in this session, please feel free to put that in the chat always. So Birgit, any response to that?
I couldn't agree more with you, Derek, because this discussion to involve patients in the development of an AI app or a chatbot or whatever is something I'm doing European-wide on an international level for many, many, many months now. So I receive per week maybe 3-4 startup requests we need to know something. And I said, do you have involved patients in your development? Just a little question, but by the way, it could surprisingly helpful if you have those patients or a patient ed board in place to also to bring that knowledge in. But the thing is, I think, and this is what I would really appreciate, a white paper giving a call to action to the startups, the students, and the developers saying, hey, there is a big power outside. These are people living with diseases. I don't like to be a patient or saying patients all the time. That are people, and they have knowledge and they have lived experience. Please involve them. They can make your tool much better. But then they are surprised, and then they are really, oh, and how can we do it? And this is the next point. They don't know where to find interested patients. So we also need maybe give them the advice how to find really interested people, because not every person is maybe interested in the development of an AI tool. And I can understand that. So not everyone is a nerd or something like this, or have this big kind of interest to see how the disease can look like with an AI. But at the end of the day, there are some people outside. I see that also from our projects we are doing, and we should find them and we should bring them together with those people who are interested to work with those people. Because then we can have a good mixture, and maybe also, and this is what I see as an innovative part of it, maybe a little bit analog, but not, but very important. We can create a new community, the community of developers and people living with diseases coming together, because this is not happening at the moment, but it should, and it should happen fast, because AI is running, and the people living with diseases have already started to use AI for their disease management or whatever. And we have ChatGPT Health outside. It's also coming. So at the moment, we have big problems in Europe and in the UK to integrate it because of the data protection and all that stuff. But it will come. And then to have those people together to a big community that will have much more influence also on the laws, on the regulations, the policies, and also to clarify what is really needed or not. That would be my thought about it.
I love that, Brigitte. And I think that goes really well into maybe Leanne's part of her identified barrier. But before we go there, I wanted to, Derek, I'm going to ask you a question that I saw came in the chat. How early on the development stage of a digital technology, AI in parentheses, should patients be engaged if the human in the loop is more patient-centered?
Great question. So, and it's definitely something that the question that we asked when we started this work was, how early is too early? And the question, or the answer was, there is no such thing as too early. So literally in the prioritization of ideas that formulate the early stage piloting of a new innovation, whether it's within an academic or a private or a patient organization setting, validating that idea or even the prioritization of an idea is always a way of ensuring that whatever the end product ends up delivering and what way it looks and what benefit it derives, that benefit is for ultimately those who originally were part of that design. All of the other steps in the process are, in my humble opinion, the impact of the involvement is not as significant as in that early stage, because it's those early ideas and the establishment of what's possible. I think certainly for me, and I've been through this on both the research side and indeed as a patient advocate, nothing beats that early engagement. And then what I would emphasize then is that what we've looked at is, so we've developed a roadmap for digital health that identifies not only the life cycle of digital health technologies in terms of the different stages that you need to hit, but we've kind of flipped that kind of normal developer life cycle and created a roadmap that tells the same story, but from a patient involvement perspective. So it's slightly different. It's not mapped directly onto the different stages that you need to hit, whether you're at an early stage investment or indeed applying for regulatory approval for whatever pathway you're following. But indeed, it's actually about mapping the opportunity onto where patients can be most impactful, even if it's at a later stage in the process. So the answer, my answer to that question is there's multiple stages, but the earlier stages are the most impactful.
Thanks, Derek. Leanne, over to you.
Yeah, and I'll build on that. Being a technology developer, and I also work with a lot of startups who are developing technologies. I do see a lot of startups that start because someone has a problem as a patient, or maybe their child does, and they're like, you know what? I really needed this as a patient. I really needed this as a caregiver. And so I think some people do hit the mark because the ideas are born from people who are experiencing the problems. And I think that that's fantastic. But then there's other times, and you look at something and you can see clearly that they never once talked to the end user about what they actually needed or wanted. And so I think it's so important to include patients and whoever the end user is. The caregiver, the clinician can sometimes be the end user. All of these people need to be included when you're developing something. They need to tell you their problems, and you need to figure out how to solve them as a technology developer. They can't start just in my head thinking, oh, I bet doctors really need this, I'm going to build it. I bet patients really need this, I'm going to build it. So I think that that's really, really important. And I think another thing that kind of builds on what I'm saying that I think is important is sometimes digital health tools are built for patients. Sometimes digital health tools are built for caregivers. Sometimes digital health tools are built for clinicians. And so thinking about things like patients wanting to be involved in the algorithms that are getting used in a hospital to maybe determine if a patient is going to go septic or have some other critical adverse event. I, as a developer, would love to know how, as a patient, you think that that might be important for you to be involved in that digital development, for example, that, you know, using AI on data to figure these things out to help predict what's going to happen with a patient. But I think that's really different than I'm building a patient portal or I'm building an app to help you monitor your diabetes. Those 100% should start with the patient and the patient need. And what you would really like to see. I mean, it should go into the requirements of the device or the technology that you're building.
Derek, you have your hand up. You want to respond to that?
Yeah, so it's actually on the last point that Leanne made in terms of for anybody who wants to actually bring something all the way into a market or to actually have patients access this. Some of the key steps along the way and some of the key motivators are around, well, what are the requirements to help me get to the next stage, and how do I build evidence bases around those requirements? And we're seeing two interesting patterns at the global level in terms of the investment community, who are often the ones that are being approached by the small and medium enterprises and are being pitched to. And they often have their own internal decision making about, well, where they would like to take a risk on it or a bet on what is likely to produce the biggest impact, not only from a financial perspective, but from an outcomes perspective. And what we're seeing is, in terms of the awardees of whether it's public or private investment firms, the portfolio companies that they're investing in, if you look at the patterns across, it's very much now shifting towards innovations that actually are targeting patient benefit. as opposed to maybe the traditional maybe provider or clinical or healthcare professional in terms of workflows and on the kind of the more structural side of healthcare delivery. So there's a big shift happening there, but there's also a shift happening in the investment community itself in terms of the criteria that it's using, whereby it's weighing up one innovation versus another. And if you can show that you have engaged meaningfully and sustainably with patients in the development of your innovation, that is increasingly up the scale of decision making for an increasing amount of investment firms, and that's across the investment community. So that's really interesting to see, and I think for any developer or any small medium enterprise, you now need to think very carefully about the engagement with patients and when you can bring them in and when you can provide the evidence of that so that you can hit your milestones for later on in the development cycle. So it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, and I know Brigitte has her hand up, sorry, but I know for that, so I'm also a judge in MedTech Innovator pitch competitions where startups are trying to get in front of investors. And I will say, I've been doing this for several years now. And one of the things that I have noticed is a shift towards making sure that the technology has a patient or patients, not just one, involved, and that they're really meeting that need, that they really understand what's going on. Investors are asking to see that now to make sure it is something that can really work for people and is not just something that I thought was cool.
Thanks, Leanne. Brigitte, over to you. And I think you're onto something. We've got a lot of thumbs up for this Tinder for developers and people living with diseases. So maybe something comes out of this session.
That would be great. So I just saw some comments, and also I want to say something about involving people living with diseases. When we are doing this, and this is something what I'm really taking serious, I heard that very often, involve patient. That makes a good impression to investors and vendors and whatever. Sometimes they treat people living with diseases like an alibi. So my thing is, I can say a patient was involved and that's it. But they had no voice. So we have also to make sure that those startups and also the companies are really listening, are really contributing and cooperating, not just saying, oh, we have 5 patients at board, yay. And then we ask them maybe 2 or 3 questions and that's it. And then we can say they were involved. No, they should take that really serious. And this is what I also see as a big issue at the moment. All want to work with the people living with the diseases, but do they take it serious? That's the question. And we have to bring it up that we need this serious thinking behind to make sure that the needs are heard and also the lived experience is really there. Because if not, we don't need them. I'm very clear here. Sorry for that. And for the Tinder, yeah. So I saw the comments, and I know it's not so easy to come together and to believe in a community. But I think we have to start, not just discussing, we have to build that community. So we are going with Ida and Data Science Labs Germany in a few weeks to the Health Tech in Basel. We got some tickets. And we will be there also to find some funders also for our projects, because we are this non-profit thingy here. But this is not the aim. We also want to go into the deep to see how they think. I want to find out, and I will do a research also, and I will ask them questions, because I want to see how do they think and what are their thoughts or needs are. Maybe this could be also a route to come out of this question, to go into action, say, okay, how can we find this community and how can we bring those people together? But we have to find the ways. It's not easy. I know it's a challenge, but we can do it.
Derek.
Yeah, I love the Tinder for AI. I'd actually probably use the term marketplace, because I think that the spaces that you create, whether it's part of it, as you say, a technology event or conference for patients, can often be a little island in the middle of an ocean of interactions, and the marketplace needs to have an incentive. So you need to have, I don't know if it's a prize or if it's something that just brings people into that space. But once people are in the space, I think what you said, Birgit, is right on the money. You can actually picture yourself in that other person's shoes, and with the right kind of space, that's when the real magic happens. Certainly in my experience, and I'm going back to my time as a researcher, and I do think that there's parallels now with what's happening in the innovation community with what maybe has happened already in the research community, where, you know, no matter what your motivations for going into research, I would venture to say that for health researchers, it's not always thinking about, I want to produce something for the end user, and that end user is a patient. Very often it's about the pursuit of knowledge or the new knowledge, and just adding your bit to the evidence base of and to science. But what happened was that there was an increasing amount of calling for patient involvement in research, and you know, the typical pushback was, well, show me the evidence that it works first, or show me the value of it, that, you know, it truly makes a difference. And that evidence is now there, but before the evidence was actually there, the funders actually got behind it, and the research funders put it into their criteria. Some of them in a very top-down way, some of them in more bottom-up way. But what it did was that it forced the researchers to fundamentally think about, well, okay, you're going to get maybe tokenism in terms of late stage of the research process, but it caused this mind shift about thinking about engagement earlier in the development of your proposal, because no matter what researchers will tell you, they are motivated by where the funding is. And if the funders are willing to fund in a certain area, then they're willing to shift towards that funding, and that is it's a motivation, it's an incentive, it's a tool that patient engagement has used and has been very effective in terms of patient involvement in research. What we're seeing now is the same kind of incentives being created, both from public and indeed private investors, and certainly for the innovation community, where you're taking that early stage research idea that has been maybe tested into humans, into clinical trials, into all of this, the later stages. It's that ecosystem that is now shifting. And it's certainly, I'm probably showing that I'm too long in the tooth now, but to be impactful anymore. But I definitely can see where things were versus where things are now. And for anybody who's coming into this field right now, the evidence base is there, and I certainly think that it's there in certain areas of health innovation. What the exciting thing for me is that we can take those principles and we can now talk about them and apply them and come up with the kind of pilots that will really test them in new digitally based, AI-based technologies. And that's where we're at as a community. And I certainly would welcome far more people, as Birgit has said, far more people need to be coming into this space. So this is only going to get bigger, in my opinion.
So thank you so much, Derek. I know that we're running super quickly on time, so I just wanted to say, I tried to scan through and see if there were any questions that we either did or didn't address. If you have additional questions that you would like to ask our panel here, please feel free to continue to put those in the chat. We'll try to reference those and make sure that they get answered. But I do want to go ahead and start transitioning now to our co-creation section of this session, so that we can get some insights from you. And then depending how we move forward with that, then we can we can answer any questions after the fact. Leanne, I know you had your hand up. Was there any last thing that you wanted to say before we move into the next section?
Yes, I do want to say there was a comment about, how do developers find patients and how, are patients empowered to reach out to technology developers and request the development of something. And I just want to say that yes, this does happen. I do get approached by patients about things that they need. I get approached by doctors about things that they need. And one of the ways that we make sure that patients are included in what we do is we are either working with patient organizations often, if we're developing a tool for a specific group, or the hospital itself that wants to develop a tool will introduce us to patients and families who, are going to be the end users, are going to be the ones affected by what we build with them or for them. So it does happen. Do feel like you can do that, because you can be listened to for sure.
Thank you, Leanne. So, Aldo, I'm going to ask you to bring our slides back up so we can transition into it. But I want to say that as we move into this next part of the discussion, all of what we're saying and what I'm seeing in the chat, we can continue on into the next section. And I think what'll be nice is we're going to bring back that classification so that we can also talk about these various areas: patient involvement, when to involve and engage and partner, AI, how it's being used within the scope of a little bit more narrow definition of digital health. And I think that that'll help us kind of hopefully take some insights and do a little bit of a what's next for an asset from the publication. So to set the stage, we thought it'd be super fun to go into ChatGPT and say, how do you define digital health? And what we got was a long list with a lot of different technologies coming at it from a technology point of view, without necessarily any type of classification. So here we go. A lot of categories, big laundry list, all technology led, with examples and descriptions, but not super helpful, not necessarily from a patient perspective. And a little bit difficult to understand where things fit within the bigger picture. So that's actually one of the key challenges that came back. So if you go to the next slide, within the stakeholder expectation matrix study, one of the key challenges that emerged from that is that there's no consensus on definitions. There's a lot of jargon-heavy language. You're getting a lot of push of technology, not necessarily a patient-led, driven need with a pulled technology solution. So in a PEOF session, actually, what happened is a group of people helped create a potential solution to this by doing a classification of digital health from the patient perspective. So we have this now co-created classification of digital health with 3 clear categories around, what a patient actually needs. And this is what you saw earlier around information. So digital health that provides information to people and patients, digital health that helps get treated, so does care delivery. This is a place that needs clinical evidence, that involves regulatory oversight, et cetera. And then other digital health that is more helping manage things, manage a condition, patient portals, EHRs, et cetera. And our point here is that everything is really supported by technology. It is not the solution. It is not, the need itself, but it supports the need from the patient point of view. So what we're going to do is go into these various classification and areas. So this classification exists within the publication. The whole point is to support, and given the emphasis that we have on literacy, on empowerment, we believe that this could potentially be a resource that's leveraged outside of the publication. So we want to bring it back to a PEOF audience. We want to go into a co-creation lab and see if there is a so what, so next, what's next for this area. So we're going to break into 3 groups. One group is going to focus on the information for people and patients. One is going to focus on the care delivery, and one group is going to focus on support. And we're going to be going through each of these questions. And then when we come back, we'll have a little bit of time for a quick conclusion and any remaining questions maybe that we haven't gotten a chance to get to yet. Okay, let's do it. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. See, everybody's coming back in. The magic is happening. The Zoom magic. And so we are going to do a quick round robin of our panel, because each person was in a different group, of just saying one thing that came out of the group discussions that they thought was really interesting, or one thing that was clearly a top priority or theme from the group. And then we will move forward. So I'm actually going to go backwards. I'm going to pick on Derek first, then Leanne, then Bergie.
Damn you, Elizabeth. Okay, one thing. We had some brilliant interventions. People who described their experience of using digital health tools, whether it was an app or a portal, or and I think the lack of trust really around not only the information that's going into the app, but the information that comes out. But then also how an awful lot of digital health apps just get used for a certain period of time and then they're gone. So that again leads to distrust. So we had the great example from Canadians are looking to interoperability at a national level between, no matter what app you develop or what use it's used for in a health setting, that the information is developed to a certain standard that makes it interoperable with other platforms. And that's a key enabler of trust, and it's certainly something that we heard from Kevin. I think Kevin, he's gone to a doctor's appointment now, but Kevin's intervention was certainly very memorable for me, because he was describing how he wants to be involved in not only the development of that legislation, but how it gets regulated and how it gets implemented. And those are the opportunities for even the policies that are being developed around digital health, and for patients to be involved at that stage. So it's not just about being involved in the development of an individual solution, it's the guardrails, the policies that are being developed. And one additional one, if I can take an additional 30 seconds, was an intervention from Tom around the ethics of the development cycle of certain technologies, and how there should be an ethics check almost within the design process to ensure that whatever is coming out in terms of information, that it is ethically designed and sound. And certainly that for me was something that isn't always there, or in fact is very rarely there, but taking the lens of looking at it through an ethical application, I think is a brilliant idea. So yeah, those are the two that stand out for me, but there were plenty more.
Thank you, Derek. Really great to hear such a nice conversation around the third category. Leanne, over to you. You had the delivery of care category.
Yes. So the biggest thing for us, I think, was the data, where it comes from. When you train algorithms, how do you know the data is accurate? How do you know that the data is representative of all groups? How do you ensure that something that's developed on one group can work for another group across the world? So it's there was a lot of discussion around that. I tried to give some of the developer insight on that, and but also some of the patient insight on that. We know that a lot of things were, you're going to have bias. You have bias with your clinician. It's why women in People of color have worse outcomes, health outcomes than white men do, right? There's bias in gender, like autism diagnosis in girls and understanding heart attack symptoms in women. All of these biases exist even before AI. And so what I was trying to say is, yes, AI is going to take on some of that bias. It's going to take on the bias of the data set where the area where the data comes from, whether it's done on a whole bunch of white people in California versus somewhere in Kenya, right? It's really, really different. And even if you make something that works really well for one group, there's so much you have to take into account before you can make it work for other groups and really ensure that you are taking into account everything, like even cultural differences, the way you translate the findings, the wording that you use, all of that's really important. And so just making sure that when you use AI to look at data, that you can use it more objectively, but also always, always, always make sure that there is a human in the loop and that AI is not the only thing making a decision. I wholeheartedly agree with, AI is not replacing clinicians at all. It's helping them. It's giving them some insights that maybe they would have missed. So data integrity, can you trust the data? Is the data diverse? That was the really big thing from our discussion, I think.
That's really interesting, Leanne. Thank you. Birgit, over to you.
Yeah, so thank you to Leanne and Derek, because you had a lot of points mentioned. I have already also on the list. We had the literacy gap, and the first thing was trust. You might have heard that already. So trust is, I would say, an overall wording or buzzword we hear, I would say, daily at the moment in some way. Also, people said they want to have correct information, so the information what is delivered for literacy should be correct and clear. If I'm critical, I would say check that out by yourself to make sure that you know the right things. Also, the cultural differences were a big theme, because not everyone is thinking in the same way. And as you said, Leanne, there are so many differences behind the people, in between the people, and also from country to country. So not everything is in the same way. So we have also to, not just in the data, also in the literacy area, we have to take a look at it, because people think different, and this is what we have to respect. What I heard is make sure that bots perform in a good way. This was coming from Carol, not just having a bot doing something. They should do the right things, and a chatbot doesn't help if it is programmed in a wrong way or in a not so good way, or also not orientated on the needs of the target group. I was a little bit jealous of Krista in Ontario, because she has this co-creation thing going on already. And there is, it seems, and I know that from other conversations also, that there is much more patient developer conversation and also co-creation going on. And this should be maybe, or could be, an example also for other countries to come in and have a look at it. How can we do it? Maybe to find a way. Language problems, we had also, Carol and Alan told us something about talking this technical term thingies. Nobody understands it. And there were, so it was a funny anecdote, but it was really an important thing. So technicians or developers has to understand the patient, and patient has to understand the developers. So we need a common language in between something. And at the end, yeah, that was it. Yeah, but it was really a great discussion. And I would say we have a lot of great points on the list, much more than I said here, but this was the most important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Birgit, Derek, Leanne, and to everyone who has contributed. We really appreciate you guys not just coming in to listen, but to roll your sleeves up and contribute and give us your thoughts and insights so that we can take a body of work that is ongoing and see how we deliver something of value, signposting to the right existing initiatives, leveraging what's already out there, showing and learning best practices, and then of course here cultivating a community interested in this partnership with people and patients in digital health. So a big thank you to everyone who attended. Auto, do we have anything else to show the group? Any last slides here? I think that we are at our time and we can.
Yeah, so maybe while I show a slide with what's coming up in, yeah, exactly, what's coming next in PEOF, we would also appreciate if you let us know what you thought about this session. We are always looking for ways of improving it. So there is just a very quick poll where you can just drop your number.
Basically, said this like the live version. It's just offline.
Thank you,
And yeah,
everyone.
don't miss out at the end of this month, PEOF plus Rare, and then we'll have another webinar by Guy Demerdi. And that's all.
Thank you so much. And as usual, the slides, the links, and everything from that will be shared after the session. So you can always reach out to anyone to that PEOF email that you receive and get any information that you feel like you missed. So we're always open, as Auto mentioned, for further collaboration. And we've got 2 sessions coming up at the end of this month and next month as well. So we'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.